Meeting to order, please. Madam Clerk, may we have roll call?
Dale Schlueter,
Yes.
Jesse Betcher,
Here.
Tweed Schuman,
Here.
Stacy Hessel,
Here.
James Schlender,
Here.
Mark Helwig,
Here.
Tom Duffy,
Here.
Bruce Paulson,
Here.
Brian Bissonette, Chuck Van Etten, Dale Olson,
Here.
Don Pettit, Ron Kinsley, Ron Buckholz,
Present.
Ed Peters.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Yes, let the record indicate we have a quorum. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Certification of compliance with open meetings law, Madam Clerk.
This meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you. Okay, the meeting agenda has been presented. We'll move on then to public comment. Anyone here that would like to address the board? I know I had several people sign up. You may come up to the podium and state your name, please, and you have 3 minutes. Sure, you can come up, sir.
Well, it was only for my reasoning later.
Yep, you can do it now, sir.
Sure,
Yep.
Sure. Hi, my name is Matt Sink. Basically, I'm the sole owner of Sinkhole Investments, LLC, and I'm trying to get the rezone passed for a property that I purchased a year ago to eventually build a campground once the conditional use permits are, approved eventually. As far as a reason for it is, I like the idea of camping, and I think it would bring a kind of a fun business to Hayward, potentially, if all things go well, a lot of families that'll, want to eat at our restaurants, buy our stuff, use our hiking, cycling, and ATV trails. As far as the campground's concerned, this one's a little different than most of the other campgrounds in the area. A lot of the campgrounds we have, they all cater to, lake recreation sports, where this is the only one that's going to be predominantly for like hiking, cycling, and ATV use. The goal ultimately is to just get trail access to, because where the property is located, it's actually on Highway 77. There's Trail 30 and 31, which are ATV and snowmobile trails that are in between Chippewa Trail Road and Highway 77 that cross. Eventually, I'd like to get that to where my property is, to have those trails tee into that trail, is the all-time goal. And that way people can have ATV access and attract campers. Don't really have much else to say about it yet, other than we're in the process of making it happen as after I get approval for the rezone.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Yep. Anyone else in the audience? Public comment. Alex, anybody online? Sure. Who is it? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Marcel. State your name, please.
I'm wondering whether you might permit me to make my comments during the discussion of agenda item 12B, Hangar ground lease agreement.
Okay, no, I guess I'd like you to make them now, sir, if you don't mind. We're
Okay,
in public comment.
okay, thank you. I'd like to mention, I sent you, Mr. Chairman, an email yesterday, actually 2 emails, one of which I revised, and there have been some small revisions since then, regarding the terms that are included the lease that's under discussion in tonight's agenda, as placing a burden on local hangar owners. However, there are aircraft, both twin engine turbines and jet traffic, making approximately 1,000 landings annually, where no cost is placed on them in an attempt, and they provide an opportunity for the county to recoup their investment in airport infrastructure. For example, giving all-weather access to the airport. I believe as much as $50,000 could be received from these operations if the county chose to do that. Moving on, I want to quickly review the issues I have with the lease under discussion. And I'll refer to the lease term number. Number 2, term and extension. This unilaterally declares a lease will be considered to be a month-to-month rental if a lessee fails to provide notification of their intent to extend the lease at least 6 months prior to the end of the current lease period. I'm suggesting an alternative that would require notification by the county to the lessee if no reply from the lessee is received within 30 days following a notification by the county of the change to a month-to-month rental. Item 4B has to do with inflation adjustments, which currently the language reads to be annual. I'd suggest that be changed to a longer period of time, perhaps somewhere between 2 and 5 years, which will save lease administrative costs for the county. Number 4C, speaking about a one-time assessment. Although this fee is described in occurring once during a lease, it is unclear whether this will be changed to the same charge to the same lessee if that lessee wishes to enter into a new lease. There is little work for the county to simply execute the lease in this case, so we see a new fee as being burdensome. Number 9, permitted uses. There are at least 2 areas of use that require further discussion. Both involve uses currently not included in either the existing lease language or in the new lease, proposed new lease, sleeping quarters and fuel storage. However, the county has approved these uses for several current lessees. Furthermore, as an airport sponsor receiving federal airport funding, the county is obligated to allow a lessee to fuel their own aircraft with their own fuel. Number 21, snow removal. The parcel included in each lease extends 5 feet beyond the hangar on all its sides. The proposed lease says snow will be removed up to within 10 feet from the hangar door. I contend the county controls the final 5 feet up until the hangar door and therefore is responsible for removing snow in the last 5 feet up to the hangar door rather than the 10 feet as described in the current lease under consideration. Number
Okay,
26.
can you finish up, Mr. Marcel, please?
I would ask that because of a lack of focus on some of the finer terms of the proposed lease under discussion on tonight's agenda, that the item be tabled for further consideration by the Public Works Committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Marcel. Alex, is there anyone else online? Okay. Thank you. Then we'll move on to number 7, approval of meeting minutes, March 18th, 2021. Mr. Duffy?
I move to approve.
Okay, Mr. Buckholz?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Duffy, second by Mr. Buckholz to approve the meeting minutes as presented. Is there any further discussion? If none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving on, number 8, COVID update. Ms. Julia Lyons. Julia, can you hear us?
I can hear you. I am trying to share my screen right now. Okay. Let's see, slideshow. Good evening, everyone. COVID update for April 20th, 2021. As we can see right now, we are doing well in Wisconsin considering the fact that Michigan and Minnesota and parts of Illinois are at red risk levels. We have continued to maintain the orange risk level in Sawyer County and in Wisconsin. We were a little bit higher about a week ago and are dropping down. So it appears that we are being able to hold strong at this point. For Sawyer County, we continue at the orange risk level. We are at 10.4 per 100,000 cases per day, and this is an average of 2.14 positive cases per day. If you are watching our daily counts, you'll notice that our counts are going to go up. That started yesterday and will be going up today, so that will be reported out. These are related to household or close contacts that we have been watching. Our vaccination rates are up to 40%, and our 65 and older are close to 75%. This is in a lot of needs to be given out to many of our partners in the area. Essentia, North Lakes, Hayward Hospital, Walgreens, and Marketplace, and a lot needs to be said for LCO, who has been sharing vaccine with us and really pushing out to the larger community. This last Friday, on the 16th, we had a mass vaccination clinic with LCO who supplied the vaccine. What you're seeing here is a picture of the volunteers that came in the morning, and some of them stayed throughout the day, along with LCO vaccinators and Sawyer County Public Health. Hayward City Fire Department, along with Round Lake, came to help with traffic control. And these are a few of our vaccinators that are shown here. And when it comes to putting on a vaccine clinic, it takes a lot of people to get everything in place. We use Pfizer, which also we have to reconstitute the vaccine. So this is what this set looks like right here. They're reconstituting vaccine and drawing up vaccine to be delivered. We do have plenty of vaccine available in our communities. Marketplace, Walgreens, Essentia, North Lakes has vaccine available. LCO has vaccine available as well. And this is available to the entire county and surrounding areas. We do have a clinic tomorrow at the LCO High School. We are welcoming walk-ins to this clinic. I'm sorry, but my screen is covering this. It is from 8:15 to 11:30 and 1 to 3:45. We do have appointments set up for that, but we also have walk-ins available tomorrow. And then as we move forward, we want to consider what is happening when we get on the other side of COVID. Our numbers are looking better. We are getting vaccines out to the communities, and we are in the process of doing a community health assessment. This is an assessment that Hayward Area Memorial Hospital does every 3 years, and the public health is required to do every 5 years. The last round of assessment, the health department has joined up with the hospital, and we are doing so again. And we have a survey out from April 15th to May 15th. We will have the link available. The hospital has already sent this out, and we are in the process of getting it on our website and sending it out to community partners. So we want to hear what everybody is feeling and thinking are our top priorities, given this past year of COVID, that we should be focused on. And that is it. Questions? And I think Dale has raised his hand.
Go ahead, Mr. Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, I had the excellent Little League fundraiser this last weekend. Fabulous. And people ask me, do they have to give their insurance information to get a shot?
Okay, so there is a two-part question to that. Some places are requesting insurance information that does not negate or cause anybody to pay anything additional. From the federal government and the state government, they would like us to request insurance information in order to get an additional fee so that we can cover our costs of getting vaccine. However, When you come to LCO or for our mass clinics and or to the health department, we do not request any insurance information. If you go to key people like Walgreens, Marketplace, North Lakes, I do not believe requires it. Essentia might. They will not charge you anything additional. It is just going to the insurance company. And actually, nobody should ever be requesting any out-of-pocket expenses to you. If anybody asks you to pay out of pocket and hand money, do not do that. Then that is fraud.
Okay,
Thank you for asking the question.
Okay, that's it. Thank you, Ms. Lyons. Appreciate
Thank
all you
you.
do.
Mhm.
All right, moving on then to number 9. Sheriff Doug Marotek and a communications update. Thank you for being here, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and fellow board members. I'd like to take a couple minutes and talk about a radio update. Just going back a little bit in history, prior to or around 2012, Sawyer County received a WISCOM grant for a radio system, a new radio system. We were one of the first agencies and counties in the state to transition to the WISCOM system. It was a new radio system being implemented. The bands, I forget if it's narrow band or wide band, there was a change. So that's why WISCOM come into play. Sawyer County did what they had to do to prepare, went basically and did a close to a 1-day cutover with the new WISCOM system at that time, which put law enforcement, EMS, and fire services on this new system within several days. With that, there was a lot of critical radio issues experienced at that time. It was very detrimental. I was a patrolman with the city of Hayward. At the time, you would have trouble receiving or transmitting. You could move 5 feet with a portable radio and it would be totally different. And days turned into weeks, months, and years before a lot of this was understood and better rectified. At the end, after several years, it was discovered that one of the primary issues of concern was we had 2 towers in Sawyer County. And with that, it only served about 70% of the county at best. Realistically, it was probably closer to 65% of the county. With that concern, at that time, Sheriff Kelsey and Emergency Manager Sanchez pursued, after some research, looking into a better system at a reasonable cost. And a simulcast system is the system that primarily surfaced, serving Sawyer County and Sawyer County's best interest. It would consist of at least 5 tower antennas in the county at an affordable cost, and hoping to reach the 90+% coverage target on receiving and transmitting with all emergency radios. About that same time in 2015, John Kruk was hired as the contracted technician to service our radio systems. He started to pursue the simulcast system. One of the problems is a CAP certification had to be approved by the state, and that included an independent firm doing testing first and then submitting that to the state for approval. Unfortunately, that process has taken over 4 years to accomplish. We finally received the CAP certification last fall, the end of 2020. In those 4 years, John continued to do his best, updating and making our WISCOM system better. It continued to get better, but with minimum coverage, we just detected a lot of dead areas, and deputies did their best to communicate before they reached those areas if they had to deal with something in those areas, or deal with it to the best of their ability accordingly. Of course, as we know, anytime you switch with the radio system, there's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of troubleshooting and things that have to be dealt with accordingly as things surface and come up. We did some additional testing in January and February. We did a switch over or went to Law D, our new simulcast system, here in March. As expected, we did suffer some challenges. The challenges were a concern for all of us. Our administrative team 2 weeks ago spent 3-4 hours a day, every day, dealing with these issues. We're very concerned about community safety. First and foremost includes the safety and well-being of our deputies and staff. So with that, we did switch back over to WISCOM as we continue to work on a few issues of concern here with the simulcast system. It has been determined that the big thing is we have a overlap issue with the added antennas. And our support for this is John Kruk is our contracted service, Celix, which is our equipment supplier, primary equipment supplier. They have added technical support with technicians assisting us. Additionally, General Communications has assisted us with technicians out of Eau Claire and Madison. Our Sawyer County IT department with Alex Butterfield and Mike Colson have assisted us. Our maintenance department with Tim Hagberg and his staff have assisted us, as well as the Wisconsin WISCOM system, which is overseen by the Wisconsin Military Affairs. So with that, there continues to be improvements. I have learned a lot about the radio system, far more than I ever realized I was going to learn, and especially how technical it is. Just making an adjustment, for example, in our dispatch center, the contact has to be made to WISCOM in Madison, and the volume levels for our dispatch center have to be set through the computer system in Madison. So it is technical and very complex to boot. When it comes to the WISCOM system has worked very well in southern Wisconsin because of the extensive tower antenna system they have. We don't have that here, nor is the state willing to foot the bill to put that system in. A lot of these antennas cost $1.5 million, $2 million an antenna. So it's unaffordable. As far as law enforcement agencies, counties with emergency services, dealing with their law enforcement agencies, fire and EMS, if they haven't gone to the simulcast system, a lot of them in northern Wisconsin already have. We will not cut over with EMS and fire until we get the issues taken care of and things fine-tuned here to where it's much better than we had with WISCOM, and we're pretty confident we're going to have a system that works pretty well. I can assure you as sheriff, I'm responsible for the safety and well-being of our sheriff's office staff and assisting our emergency manager with the radio communication system. I want it known too that I have an open door policy. I appreciate any feedback, concerns from staff, county board members, the public at large, and otherwise. We take our radio system pretty seriously, and please let me know of any concerns. Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Helwig.
Just a couple of questions. The new system that was it D?
Law D?
Law D, is that a statewide system,
No, it's not.
just for the county?
It's just a county system.
Okay, and say, how would other counties contact us? Would they have to go to Law D or?
They will have the ability to contact us on Law D. We have a networking process with permission to use their frequencies. They have permissions to use our frequencies through travel and mutual aid assistance as well. Plus, WISCOM is still in existence and a system that we all can use. One of the concerns we have, we are told in the next 18 months, give or take, that Wiscom is going to an 800 megahertz system, which is going to make the system more detailed, but be much less range. So would probably reduce our range to about 50% in the county.
And that's the reason that you're possibly going to this other what was it called?
Simulcast?
Simulcast, I'm sorry. Now that simulcast, is that gonna be cellular, or is it going to be just for the radio communications?
Just for the radio communication, separate from cell phone. We may have some shared towers with for antennas. Their antennas and our antennas using the same tower, which is much cheaper. The other thing I want to add is there is one thing we've learned additionally, and Alex can expound on this further because this is where his services come into play, is we need internet service at every one of these towers additionally. So, and there's a lot of the problems we're having is with the internet system and tower to tower, you have that delay and that tower overlap causing that delay. That's what we're discovering has been the biggest problem. So that's being worked on, and we're pretty confident we have some solutions to give us better service.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sheriff. All right, moving on to number 10, Zoning Committee Chair Report. Mr. Buckholz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The zoning committee held its monthly public hearing this last Friday. There was a pretty full agenda, including a semi-contentious new gravel pit operation, which was ultimately denied for the conditional use permit by the zoning committee. The committee continues to see large amounts of potential rezones and conditional use permits, which mirrors the busy start to a construction season. As indicated by the zoning administrator and the zoning department, it has seen nearly 20% increase in permits over the last 4 years. With one rezone case tonight and contract extension on the agenda, if there's no additional questions, I will turn it over to Jay to present the cases. But before I do that, Mr. Chairman, I would like to read something on an email I got here the other day.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
This email is to thank you for the professionalism and the concern which you conducted the hearing and the land use permit in the Round Lake Township that was denied. I listened online, and one of the many people who spoke in opposition to that permit. Now, the reason I read that is a lot of times there's a lot of negativity towards zoning, but once we get a good compliment like that, it deserves to be given to Jay and his zoning and the zoning committee. So,
Great. Thank you, Mr. Buckholz. Okay, Jay, if you want to come forward with the first rezone, please.
Yeah, first rezone case, or only rezone case, rezone number 21-003, Sinkhole Investments LLC, owner Matthew Sink. Property location, southeast one quarter, the southeast one quarter, lot 2, section 24, township 41 north, range 9 west, and parcel 010-94124-4406. 18.82 total acres zoned residential recreational 1, and another parcel in the same section, town and range, ending in parcel number 1104 or 1101 is for 40 total acres zoned agricultural 1. That site address is 14705 State Highway 77. Purpose of the request is to change the zone district from agricultural 1 and the recreational 1, which is a total of 58.82 acres, into residential recreational 2. The purpose of that rezone request is then to build a campground. With granting of the rezone to residential recreational 2, the owners would then need to apply for conditional use permit for the campground operation. There's only one other small piece of RR2 in that immediate vicinity. That was another parcel of land that was rezoned back in 2019, and that was for the purpose of the constructing of the Berkey Bridge over the Highway 77. That acreage is 1.2 acres. There's no other RR2 zone property within a 5 mile plus radius from that area. This may be viewed as spot zoning, but spot zoning is not necessarily illegal because no because such zoning is not necessarily inconsistent with the purposes for which zoning ordinances can be passed. However, rezoning should be consistent with long-range planning and based upon considerations which affect the whole community. Future land use map for the town of Hayward shows this area as rural presidential as defined by the town of Hayward's comp plan. Development should be located in order to minimize fragmentation of productive agricultural or forest lands and to minimize disruption of existing uses. However, the town of Hayward can change these maps. There are several other residential structures in the immediate area to the east, west, and north of the subject property. However, the NRCS USDA Web Soil Survey does not show this as indicated as prime agricultural farmlands due to the severe slopes, or at least several slopes within the area. There were 8 opinion letters sent out to adjacent property owners. 6 were returned, all 6 with objections and read into record. At the town board meeting on March 9th, motion was approved by the town of Hayward. At the Sawyer County Zoning Committee, the public hearing was on March 19th. There was additional testimony taken from both those support and objection to the proposed request. This was also the first time in which we've seen a proposed rezone request for a campground that was not accompanied by another proposal for the conditional use permit. That being said, zoning ordinances currently do not have this as a requirement, nor can a rezone be conditioned as it is a legislative act. The zoning committee is looking into future policy decisions for that. But at that meeting, Sawyer County Zoning Committee made the recommendation to the County Board of Supervisors. It was a vote of 4-1. Findings of facts: it would not create an air quality, water supply, or pollution problem. It would not create an objectionable view. That is all.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Mr. Paulson.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to refer this rezone back to the zoning committee to be brought back to the full board once the committee has reviewed the conditional use permit for the campground that's going to be located on this property.
Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Paulson to remit this rezone back to the zoning committee for further review and discussion. Okay, is there a second? Mr. Buckholz.
I second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so I got a motion by Mr. Paulson, second by Mr. Buckholz to send this rezone back to the zoning committee for further discussion.
Okay, discussion. Well, I want to assure the Sinks and my fellow board members, this is not a sleight of hand or an offhanded way to kill this project. I have voted for campgrounds in the past, and I'll continue to vote for campgrounds in the future. As Jay mentioned, this is the first time in my 12 years on the zoning committee that we've done we did a rezone without hearing the underlying conditional use permit plans. And I'm going to ask the board to remand back to the zoning committee so we have an opportunity to review the requests to build a campground, and then once we have, bring it back to the full board for approval.
Thank you. Mr. Schlender.
So Mr. Paulson or Mr. Buckholz, either one can explain this. So what is the need for the conditional use permit if it's not required under statute? And second, does this delay the construction? Why would we not pass this now and then give him an opportunity if it's necessary for a conditional, especially if it's not required under statute? So that's just my question about this.
Jay or Mr. Paulson?
Jay, you want to answer that, or do you want me to?
Sure, I can try and you can come in with that. The conditional use permit would only be needed for the actual operation of the campground, looking at the site layouts, the number of sites, the hours of operation, and what other conditions you may put on there. No fireworks, quiet hours are to be from this time to that time. That's what conditional use permits look at for that specific operation. The rezone itself is needed to actually even apply for the conditional use permit. And that's why they're rezoning that land from the mix of Ag 1 and R1 to RR2. Only RR2 is the appropriate zone district to even apply for that conditional use permit. I think that only answered probably half of your question. Mr.
Right.
Paulson can maybe ask or
Well,
answer the
I
other
think
half.
the other half of the question was, can construction on the campground start now? And Jay can correct me, but I do believe you need a conditional use permit approved before you can start construction on the campground.
That's correct.
Mr. Hellwig?
Did I hear you correctly saying that it has to be rezoned before they can do the conditional release?
Generally, they would be held in concession or at the same time. They'd be heard at the same meeting. However, there are no statutory requirements that require that, no zoning ordinance that requires that it be accompanied with that conditional use permit. Anyone can come in and propose for a rezone. If you wanted to rezone your land to commercial, you don't need plans to show what you're wanting to do, but you are supposed to ask and entertain as to what your intent is. Their intent is for a campground, but it, again, had no accompanying plans as to, okay, what is this campground actually going to look like? They're basically going to have a carpet rezone of that area with a plan to be submitted at a later time.
Okay, as a follow-up, do you know why that was not presented?
I can't speak for the owner, but if it were my shoes, there's probably a lot of money that would be tied to developing an actual campground plan, be it a site layout, topography map, where the sewer lines are going to be located, where the water lines are going to be located. There's a lot of money needed to present those plans, where if they were denied a rezone, they would be spending a lot of money to not even come in front of this board with that.
Of course, that would make sense.
Thank you, Mr. Hellwig. Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Paulson, second by Mr. Buckholz to remand this rezone back to the zoning committee for further discussion. Is there any further discussion? Anybody online, Alex? Okay. If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Two opposed. Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Jay. All right, moving on to letter B, Northwest Regional Planning Commission packet.
Yeah, last winter, we signed a packet with Northwest Regional Planning to actually help us formulate the comprehensive plan update. Due to COVID, we weren't able to, or we're not going to be able to finish that plan by the anticipated date, which was June. This extension would bring that to November of 2021. There's no additional money that is being requested. It is just an extension of that contract work with them. It does need county board approval in order to extend that, though.
Mr. Hellwig?
Make a motion to approve.
Mr. Paulson? Okay, motion by Mr. Hellwig, second by Mr. Paulson to approve the Northwest Regional Planning Commission packet extension. Is there any further discussion? Alex, anybody online? Okay. If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving to number 11, Public Safety Committee Chair Report. Mr. Schlender.
Mr. Chairman, the Public Safety met on April 8th and received normal reports. The jail is running at about, I think it was about 76 or 77% capacity. Positive reports from ambulance and whatnot. We got this backwards, so if we could, in the future, can we put criminal justice coordinating update later on the public safety, because it throws me off a little bit. So under 11A, criminal justice coordinating council update, that council met on April 7th, and we received a report from Justice Point, which was hired to provide services for the jail, for our criminal justice system, coordinating with the tribe. And we seated, so the Justice Point provided a report. They have people that are now part of the bond testing program to work on alleviating the jail population. And we also created a working group to work on what is the TAD grant. TAD grant stands for something, a version, something program. It's a state grant that will, if it's approved or granted by the state, it would provide programming funds for the court, for the county to developing a drug court, which is one of the conditions for us to receive the second courthouse. Moving back now to public safety, we have two items for discussion. One is a resolution being offered by child support. This is a standard resolution that's being offered by other counties to recognize the increase in funding. With permission, I would bypass reading the resolution and just ask for a vote. It's been recommended from public safety unanimous for it to be adopted by the county board and then presented as part of the ambassador program or something.
Mr. Buckholz,
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the resolution as presented.
Mr. Hellwig.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Buckholz, second by Mr. Hellwig to approve the resolution 2021-69 child support funding resolution. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Finally,
Letter
Mr.
C.
Chairman, under 11C, I blame Jesse Betcher, but Mr. Betcher motivated me to work on developing a public safety mission statement, which was a request that Mr. Hoff had made of all the committee chairs more than a few years ago. And so when he worked on a mission statement for the county, I, wanting to match him in his eagerness, developed a mission statement for discussion with public safety. I mirrored it on, we have one for land force water, and I looked at other counties. So what you have before you today is a draft public safety mission statement that outlines what would be a draft mission statement, as well as some information that describes the jurisdiction of the committee, some of the entities, the county public safety entities that provide information that the Public Safety Committee provides oversight in terms of policy development. I did ask Mr. Hoff for our corporate counsel to review it so that I did not put any stink bombs or anything else in there and then correct my grammar and typos. So what's before you has been advanced with approval from public safety for consideration. So Mr. Chairman, I would be looking for any discussion on this, and the action, should a motion be presented, would be to accept this mission statement and this document, and then have this document incorporated into the county board rules under I think it's part 3C, which actually calls for mission statements and other information from the standing committees of the county board.
Thank you. Mr. Betcher, do you care to comment at all?
I mean, I don't have any comment. I just appreciate Mr. Schlender's attempts to create a mission statement.
Mr. Hellwig,
I just wanted to approve this mission statement if we need a motion this time.
we do. So that's a motion to approve and incorporate this mission statement.
I'll second.
Mr. Paulson seconds. Motion by Mr. Hellwig, second by Mr. Paulson to approve the public safety mission statement and incorporate it into our bylaws. Is that correct, Mr. Hoff? Okay. Is there any further discussion, Mr. Schlender?
I would just ask, Ms. Roker, are you on the line with us?
I am, sir.
And have you had a chance to look at this document before I permanently embarrass myself in front of the county?
I did look at it briefly before it went to your committee, and I thought it was appropriate. Certainly setting forth your mission statement is a policy decision, but it looked fine from my perspective within the four corners of the legal requirements of your committee.
Thank you. I have no other questions,
Okay.
Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Schlender. Okay, a motion by Mr. Hellwig, second by Mr. Paulson to approve the public safety mission statement. Is there any further discussion? Alex? Okay. If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That concludes my
Thank-
report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Schlender. Okay, moving on to number 12, Public Works Committee Chair Report.
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman.
Kinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I work almost weekly with our maintenance department, our highway department, and our airport. And I'm very proud of all of them, how well they respond to the needs of the county, and I think they do an absolutely excellent job. We'll move on to letter A. Last county board meeting, I was fortunate enough to have some board members step forward and tell me that they would be interested in being on the committee. And I'd like to thank them people for doing that, because it makes my job easier. As we dug into the board rules, we found out more information, and we have authorized to create an ad hoc committee for the courthouse project, and it's in your packet. It explains that who should be on the committee, and it needs to be approved. Questions, thoughts?
And I'll just read the members of the ad hoc committee include the Sawyer County Board Chairman, the Public Works Committee Chair, Public Safety Committee Chair, Finance Committee Chair, and the County Administrator. Mr. Helwig,
Move to approve.
Mr. Paulson.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion by Mr. Helwig, second by Mr. Paulson to approve the resolution to authorize creation of an ad hoc committee for the courthouse project. Is there any further discussion? Alex? Okay. If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Kinsley?
Thank you. The second part of that is, after reading through the rules, it's got to go back to the Public Works Committee to appoint them. So that means we have to have a special Public Works Committee meeting. We have a schedule we have to meet. So I thought I'd ask if we can have a special meeting on Wednesday, the 28th at 6 p.m. It'll be a short meeting, but it needs to be done
Wednesday, the
28th of April.
28th.
Okay.
Mr. Slender?
Mr. Kinsley, with this ad hoc committee operating under Public Works, is it necessary for the ad hoc committee to be at this Public Works meeting?
No. Thank you.
No, okay. Okay, so we've got a special Public Works Committee meeting planned for April 28th, 2021. Same time, Wednesday,
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Okay,
Thank you. Letter B, Hangar ground lease agreement, discussion and possible action. We have a copy of it here, the hangar lease template. It was approved by the Public Works Committee. When we met, there is a typo in there. Number 20, it says that the snow removal lease agreement to plow and remove snow at no extra charge from the taxiway to the front of the hangars except for within 10 feet. That should be 5 feet. And it is later in the same notice of the paperwork.
okay, so what,
This template, it was approved by the Public Works Committee. I'd expect it to be approved here.
okay. And then, Mr. Peters, you had some changes I know you read in Public Works. Do you mind reading those here, sir?
Those are not all in here? Okay.
They are,
They are all in here.
Yes. thank you.
okay. So these are just dates to fill in. Okay, Mr. Schlender.
Is 12B different from item 13?
No, it's an overlap. It's a error. Put the agenda together.
Oh,
Thank you.
I make a motion to approve the lease agreement as presented by Chairman Kinsley.
Okay, second by Mr. Peters. Motion by Mr. Schlender, second by Mr. Peters to approve the hangar lease template with revisions and edit that Mr. Kinsley corrected on number 20. Okay, is there any discussion? Mr. Paulson?
Discussion. I'll ask the committee chairman, did the person who spoke tonight have a chance to speak to the Public Safety Committee and Public Works, I'm sorry?
Yes, he did. And we've had it on the agenda for 2 months. He spoke to us for 2 months. We
Good.
feel that we've met the needs. Thank you.
Okay, so I got a motion by Mr. Schlender, second by Mr. Peters to approve the hangar lease template with revisions and edits. Is there any further discussion? Alex? Nope. If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr.
Does that conclude your report, sir? Okay, moving on to number 14, Land, Water, Forest, Resource Committee. Mr. Paulson.
Need action. One is the outdoor recreation plan, which needs approval. I guess I would entertain a motion to approve
Mr.
that.
Buckles,
Make a motion to approve the county plan for outdoor recreation 21 through 2025 revised.
Mr. Kinsley.
I'll make a second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Buckles, second by Mr. Kinsley to approve the outdoor recreation plan 2021 through 2025 revised. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Letter B, sir.
The next item on the agenda is the over-the-counter land sale for the town of Ojibwa. This is, I guess, the third one we've seen in 3 months. We would need a motion to approve. The treasurer has recommended.
Mr. Buckles,
Make a motion to approve the over-the-counter land sale in the town of Ojibwa.
Mr. Duffy.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Buckles, second by Mr. Duffy to approve the over-the-counter land sale, town of Ojibwa. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Paulson, anything else? Thank you, sir. Moving on to number 15, Health and Human Services Board Chair Report. Mr. Schleter. Sure, whatever you feel appropriate.
The April meeting of Health and Human Services Board. Okay, we started with committee reports. Ms. Goucher discussed a lot of cooperation between LCO and Sawyer County regarding vaccinations, also potential uses for their new clinic that they are building out there. We went on to discuss with Joy Johnson, the Senior Resource Center. Again, she told us that while income was down, expenses were down, and they submitted the annual 85-21 report required by the state, and it has been accepted and filed by the state. It's basically an annual audit of expenditures and income. At this point in time, she also mentioned that the annual grant that they use to replace their bus, the Senior Resource Center bus, the agency responsible for that grant has been lagging because of COVID. Now there's not any certainty that we will absolutely get the grant, but she is working on it. In the meantime, she feels that the Senior Resource Center has enough funds to cover the down payment and then monthly payments to take care of the purchase itself. It would be nicer if they won the grant, and they are working on that. After that, we had a discussion about the Oasis building, the one here in town on 63 South that has been used for, instead of sending juvenile Sawyer County people out to group homes and other facilities, oftentimes a long way away from Hayward, to have them here in town so that they can have better reaction with their families, interaction, I should say. The discussion centered around a lack of use. Right now, Sawyer County is responsible for, correct me if I'm wrong, 6 beds, which currently only 2 are being used, but we have to pay for them under the agreement with
Northwest Passage.
Northwest Passage, thank you. This is probably an untenable situation. We are considering ways to increase the population by reaching out to other counties around us and suggesting that they use our facility, or if that doesn't work, or we also have to consider closing the center and closing the facility, and then putting the 2 people that we have in there now potentially located somewhere out of county. We would prefer to keep it open, but we have to face economic realities. Let's see. You want me to talk about the CAP program now too? Okay. For last Friday, Paul Grahovac, Joe Bodo, myself, and the chair, Tweed Schuman, met with Pete Petrowski, Jimmy Boy Edming, Janet Bewley, and Beth Meyer was there, although she was dealing with an illness and was only able to participate in a small fashion. We were talking mostly about Mendota and Winnebago. I got it written down right here. I can't read my own writing. It's my own fault. They are the go-to places for when we have to put somebody into protective custody, have them evaluated. Sometimes court systems will send them back to us or send the word back to us, so we have to keep them in a facility for up to a year and prepare somebody who may have some mental health issues. We have to, under court order, get them into a place where they are competent to defend themselves and understand the charges against them. This can be very expensive because these facilities, Winnebago and Mendota, $1,500, $2,500, $2,600 a day. Very, very expensive. And we currently have 4 people, 2 of which are in Mendota and 2 of which are in Winnebago, and 2 of which may be in Mendota, at least in an off and on basis for the majority of the rest of this year. Supporting those 4 people in those facilities could realistically cost Sawyer County $2.5 million. Folks, that's money we ain't got. We were discussing that issue with the 4 legislators. We obviously talked about funding sources. We discussed the possibility that since court orders are involved, that we may indeed be allowed to levy for these placements outside of the levy limits. The legislators wanted to know if we had tried a referendum to support additional money for these placements. We indicated that while we do feel an obligation for these people that are going, basically these poor people are going through hell in their own worlds because of their mental issues. They need our help. We want to help them, but a referendum would be a one-time situation. We would have to do it year after year after year. And frankly, 16,000 people in northern Wisconsin trying to come up with an extra 2 to 3 million that they can afford to give to Sawyer County through property taxes. The referendum has little or no chance of being passed. We did discuss a situation wherein all of the counties in Wisconsin have some issues with similar placements, and perhaps we could create, the state could create a group of outliers, those people who are likely to be in these facilities for long-term, longer than 6 months, longer than a year, whatever is determined to define that definition. And then once they are, then all of the people of Wisconsin, all the taxpayers could be paying taxes to support those outliers. There was also discussion about a capitation rate per county, where based upon the, what rate, how much of the money the land is worth, what rate is that called? Yes, the evaluation rate and the population of that county, a capitation rate could be designated for each county. Once the county reaches that point, the state takes over. That did interest some of the four legislators, especially Mr. Petrowski. He thought that could be an innovative solution. They talked about building facilities closer to northern Wisconsin. We talked about we need help now. This is an untenable situation for our county. Mr. Petrowski indicated that he would like to visit and get together with Sawyer County board members and further discuss that. And we indicated that the next thing on the agenda was going to be to invite all four of them to come up. Senator Bewley said that she is in Hayward every Friday morning at the Quick Trip, picking up coffee for the rest of her trip back up to Bayfield. And she would be happy to have an early morning meeting with a small committee as long as we supplied the Quick Trip coffee. I says, I'll take care of that. But we had some good communication. The representatives seemed, for the most part, truly interested in finding a solution. They told us that there are 250 bills before them for consideration. They'll be lucky if the legislature gets through a fifth of those, but they understand that this is a very dire situation for pretty much all of the northern counties. And we ended with all four legislators being told that our Mr. Hoff would contact them and see if we couldn't figure out appropriate dates to meet. And that was pretty much the end of my discussion.
Great. Mr. Helwig?
Just a couple, Mr. Schlender. Now that facilities, that's Northwest Passages, weren't their facility, but yet.
It's our building. They work with under contract to run the process.
And there's only 6 beds, correct, total?
There's 8 beds total.
But we are responsible for 6, but we're only using 2 of those 6.
Yes.
And who would possibly be in those other 2?
Any male juvenile from Sawyer County who is court ordered to attend that facility.
Okay, I see that even though they'd still be Sawyer County, but we pay for the 6. And so those are the kids that would be going there. They would possibly, instead of going to Eau Claire, they'd be going there, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Oftentimes at a lesser rate than out of county. It was set up that way, not necessarily to make money for the county, but to stem the loss, the cost of this treatment to the county.
Thank you. Answering them well, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Schluter. All right, moving on to the drinking water fee justification. Julia, do you want to comment on that, please? If not, then-
I apologize. I was trying to get unmuted.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we are asking, when we became an agent of the state, we did set fees in place for water. And as we have done a relook at this, Matt McKay has brought forward that we did have some lab increases with Oshkosh, and wanting to make sure that we cover our cost through fees. And so we are asking for the following. We are asking for bacteria to continue to be at $25. We're asking to no longer have nitrate or arsenic individually because we are no longer using those. We're asking for the combination package of bacteria and nitrate to be $50, which would have been what the bacteria and nitrate would have been individually. We are asking for the homeowners package to stay or to move up to $70. And as you look at the fees, this does not quite cover our fees. However, this is the most used package for us. And most of the time we're able to have at a minimum, two packages that are sent at one time. So we're able to save the costs on postage. And the reason for keeping this at that lower level is because this is the one that we do highly recommend, and we want to keep this at as low a cost as possible so that homeowners are able to purchase this and test their water. We also have a real estate package that we're asking for a $5 increase from 95 to 100. We are not asking for any change in our metals package. And then we are asking to add a third-party water collection. We have seen HUD and BA that for those loans that they need a third party to collect the water. And so we are asking for this one to be added. That would also include a minimum of 1 hour time, depending on the amount of time that it takes us to go out to collect and the mileage fees. And that is what we are requesting. HHS board has reviewed this, had discussion, and has asked for this to move forward.
Okay, thank you, Julia. Okay, Mr. Schluter, we have an action item 15B.
Okay, this is to approve the increases in the fees.
Mr. Helwig.
I make a motion to approve those fees.
Okay, Mr. Paulson.
Second.
Okay, got a motion by Mr. Helwig, second by Mr. Paulson to approve resolution 2021-70 to authorize increase in drinking water test fees. Is there any further discussion? Alex? Okay, if not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you, Mr. Schluter. Moving on then, number 16, Finance Committee Chair Report, Mr. Paulson.
Mr. Chair, I have two items. One is an action item, and I guess one is I'll call it an editorial comment. The first item is an action item. The treasurer recommended the approval of the signature change. The clerk of court, Jill Tom, has transferred to the DA's office, so we have to add another signatory for the clerk of court, and she's recommending Leslie Strappen. The committee reviewed it and approved it and sent it on to the county board.
Mr. Kinsley.
Move to approve.
Mr. Duffy.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kinsley, second by Mr. Duffy to approve the Franson Bank signature change as stated by Mr. Paulson. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
And my
Next,
next
sir.
item I'd like to talk about, in the administrator's report, you'll notice that we're going to receive about $3.2 million of funds to be spent on items that are allowed within, you can find those in the administrator's report again, and the money must be spent by the end of 2024. That really seems like a long way off, but the way government moves, that's going to be here quite quickly. and most likely the requests we're going to get for the funds are going to exceed the amount of money that we have. I am recommending that the board should begin now considering setting priorities on how to spend that money. And I think it's in the best interest of the board that ask each board member to make recommendations on how to spend the money within the next month or two. That concludes my report.
That is, Mr. Paulson, that's 3.2 million. And Mr. Hoff, when do we expect to receive that?
We receive half of it probably in May, and then another half next May.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Paulson. All right, then moving on, number 17, Economic Development UW Extension Committee Chair Report, Mr. Schlender.
Mr. Chairman, the committee met on April 12th. Received reports, annual reports from UW Extension, as well as a report from Northwest Regional Planning. The item of interest that I wish to bring today is that we had a visit from the County Historical Society. Mr. Ferguson came. This is an initiative that was discovered by Mr. Betcher. We are looking to see if there's any type of support that we could provide for the state historical or the county historical society. They have artifacts, exhibits, photos, and essentially no place for those to be displayed. They were essentially shut down during COVID. They are in need of volunteers, and Mr. Bissonette is going to initiate conversations with the tribe, with the Kinnaman project, to see about maybe getting some of the exhibits made available, and also about getting some of the photos dispersed to some of our elders to see if we can identify some of the people whose pictures were taken. Being a history geek myself, this is a pretty exciting endeavor that we're looking at. Some of the other some of the other members of the board are excited about this potential endeavor, that this could be an exciting time. I mean, there's a lot of history there that's contained. The history of the county, the tribe are intermingled, and there's some stories in there that could be forthcoming. So this might be a standing report as we move forward. We're going to be reaching out to Faith Smith, who is the curator for the Kinnaman School, and seeing about developing a relationship. So as for the 3.2 million, send me a list. I have some ideas for you, Mr. Paulson. But if you want, we can actually probably put that as an agenda item for all the standing committees to formally kind of examine that. If there's no questions, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Schlender. All right, moving on, number 18, County Administrator's Report, Mr. Hoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few items of note this month. Of course, the top thing on our mind is the American Rescue Plan Act and what that means for us. As Mr. Paulson stated, the 3.2 million that will be paid directly to Sawyer County from the Treasury. We expect that sometime in mid-May. And as I said, another half of that next May. We did receive some word from the U.S. Treasury this week on guidance, but unfortunately the guidance was only on how that money is coming in with our DUNS number and Sam's number and the bank account that it rolls into, all those finer details. That's the only thing that they've given us so far. Word is that some additional guidance will be coming through probably at the end of this month, if not early next month, with regard to defining what are qualified expenditures for those monies. Generally, they listed 4 broad categories when that Plan Act was enacted, but exactly the guidance that counties can use, we're still awaiting that. Also, compounding the difficulties is, the state budget is being prepared at this time. They'll be allocating, state dollars as they normally do in the budget process to things. There are dollars in the Rescue Plan Act going directly to the state, and so they'll be allocating dollars that are allocated to the state out, and so we could see some additional funds through those efforts. So as an example, in the governor's budget, he had some money in for broadband infrastructure. There could also be funds coming through on the state from the money that the state was allocated for broadband. We could also use our money for broadband, but we don't want to use our money for that if there's going to be money coming in through other sources. So it's going to be kind of a timing issue on when all of these other pieces kind of fit in with our pieces as well. But it is important that we start thinking about the priorities and the needs of the county for these one-time funds. Again, these funds are not going to solve our normal operating budget issues that we will continue to have now and into the future. These funds are one-time funds for the purpose of recovering the economy and the people from the pandemic that we've been experiencing over the past over a year now. So, this is a great opportunity for the county that won't come around again. So it does take careful consideration for sure. There's some other things winding through the state. Senate Bill 279, there's an associated Assembly bill with that too. That's regarding a proposal to pay each taxpayer approximately 10% of their net property taxes back. That's using some of the dollars allocated to the state. So that is some legislation we're keeping our eye on. There was also some talk about a sales tax holiday for bars and restaurants that would last through the summer. I'm not sure where that's at currently, but there's some things that certainly could affect us in the county as we move forward here. Tomorrow evening, or actually during the day, I think the Joint Finance Committee is having their meeting in Rhinelander. And then on Thursday, they'll be meeting in Menominee, followed by April 28th, they've got a virtual hearing. So those are hearings that the Joint Finance Committee will have about the state budget process. Also tomorrow, there's a session from the governor's putting on with regard to climate change and our environment. So that's a 6 p.m. meeting. That's a virtual meeting as well. Some news, Sawyer County Airport was featured in Business View magazine. That's a publication that features various businesses. They have about 840 subscribers across North America. So it's nice to have local presence in that magazine. They did a nice article on the airport and the services that are provided out there. There's a link to that article on the bottom of my report if you'd like to read more about that. It also provided an opportunity for Hayward Lakes to place an ad alongside that. So as people get excited about flying into Sawyer County, they can also make arrangements to spend more money while they're here. So that's a good thing. The courthouse remodeling project, the request for proposal for a construction manager is out on the street. Those proposals are due on Thursday, April 22nd. And after that, we'll be reviewing those proposals with the ad hoc committee and making a selection, which will then start the process of details on the design and construction schedule for that major project. Mr. Sleeter mentioned the CAP team, the Human Services Day activity that allowed us to talk to the legislators directly about some of our issues and problems that we have as far as on the human services side. We'll also be talking, we being the HHS director, Paul Grahovic, and some of his staff and myself will be meeting with a member of the media tomorrow to have a discussion about some of those topics as well, so that we can get a little bit more media coverage. There's going to be an article, kind of a regional article, not just Sawyer County, but how that affects the region with the mental health issues that we're experiencing currently. We've had some more discussions on the ambulance billing side. Our company was recently purchased by another individual, so we've been working with him to make sure that the activity that they're doing for us meets with our expectations. been making significant progress on the Time Clocks Plus project. That's the automated timekeeping system that will allow us to not use paper timesheets anymore, but do it electronically, which should greatly improve the accuracy and the time it takes to do a payroll. So that's one of the efficiency projects that we currently have going on. Just when you think you've heard enough about airport leases, you're probably going to hear about them for the next couple of months. What you looked at tonight was a template on the new leases. So as those existing leases expire, and there are a couple that have expired already, and that template will then be used to negotiate the new leases for those expired leases. So you'll see individual leases coming forward from Public Works to the full board for approval as those leases expire, and we use that new template to create the new leases. The WCA annual business meeting is on June 28th. And I believe at that meeting, they look at all of the resolutions that have been submitted to WCA for the annual business meeting. So as we look at May and June committee and board meetings, think of those things that we need to bring to WCA's attention, to bring to the legislators' attention, and talk to your committee chairs if there's some things that you want on your committee agendas with regard to resolutions that we would want to bring forward for that. And you can talk to your board chair, Mr. Tweet Schuman, for more information. Okay. Regarding
Thank you, Mr. Buckholz. Go ahead, Tom.
Regarding the census, there was a delay in the 2020 census, obviously, with the pandemic. And so that does create some problems with board elections next year if the redistricting does not get done in time, which it won't since the data wasn't ready in time. So I believe what the plan they're trying to work through the legislature now is that there would be elections at the same time next year in April, using the same districts as currently exist. So there would be no redistricting until the next for board purposes. So that's what they're currently thinking right now. So we'll be updating that as we hear more. And that's what I have, unless you've got further questions.
Mr. Kinsley.
For redistricting, can't we just, when it comes to that time, can GIS just do all that for us? He's got the maps.
They'll be involved in it, yes, but it takes the data that we haven't seen yet. So they will be involved in it, and the county clerk as well.
Okay. Alex, anybody online for Tom? Nope. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hoff. Very good report, sir. All right, moving on then to any other matters for discussion only. I know, Mr. Hoff, there's governor's fishing opener or something coming up. He's coming up here, what, in a week? End of April, I think.
First weekend in May.
First weekend of May. Okay. Anything else? Alex, anybody online? Any other matters for discussion only? Nope. If not, thank you all. We are adjourned.